it's Lara here. I'm back with your weekly astrology forecast. Today is Wednesday, February 24th, 2021, and this forecast will cover today through to March 2nd. So welcome. Thanks for being here. I am in my cozies today, my big hoodie, because we woke up to no heat this morning. Our furnace conked out. So we've got some space heaters and stuff, and we're fine, but just waiting to hear from the furnace place to see if they can get here today and sort us out. So fingers crossed. But you know, I'm staying warm. So, all right. So we have a full moon coming up on the 27th. On the weekend, we have a full moon in Virgo, and we're going to talk about that in the video today, along with a few other things that are happening. Right now we have the moon in Leo. The moon entered Leo this morning. And when I'm talking about time frames in these forecasts, I'm using Eastern Standard Time, because that's my time zone. So you can adjust accordingly. So I've got, we've got the moon in Leo as of this morning. And then on Friday, she's going to move into Virgo and prepare for that full moon that's happening on Saturday in Virgo, which we're going to spend some time talking about today. And then on Sunday afternoon, she'll move over into Libra and then Scorpio on Tuesday. So that's where the moon is at, which I always like to sort of, give you a heads up about that. Sometimes I go into a little bit more detail, sometimes a little less, like today, just kind of tell you where the moon is at. But if you want to get a sense of, why that's important and maybe why you want to keep track of where the moon is at and how that could be helpful to you, then you can download my free guide to working with the moon over at my website, and the link to that is below. Today, we also have a couple of different aspects going on that are supportive, what we call trines, right? A trine is a supportive aspect. It's when the two planets involved are in a 120-degree angle to each other and they are working harmoniously together. So we have Jupiter in trine with the North Node, and that's really, the nodes of the moon represent our trajectory sort of thing, right? Particularly if we're talking about evolutionary astrology, and which is what my foundation sort of is in originally, is evolutionary astrology. That's how I first really got into astrology. I was into it when I was younger and stuff, but like when I really first started studying more seriously, it was evolutionary astrology that I entered. I entered through that door, and since have gone down some other rabbit holes. And I still, there's a lot of things from evolutionary astrology that I still very much work with and use and think are really useful and helpful. And particularly when we're talking about sort of the more psychological aspects of astrology. But I also have been finding, studying more traditional or ancient astrology and Hellenistic astrology, a real benefit as well. And it is, in some ways, I think that I kind of wish I had that foundation first, if we're being honest. But so now I sort of use these things together at this point. This blend of the more ancient and some pieces of the modern. So that was a little tangent, but now kind of thing where I'm coming from. But if you didn't know before. So anyways, as I was saying, the nodes of the moon, when we're talking evolutionary astrology, represent our trajectory. The south node is our past, the north node is our future sort of thing, where we're headed, right? The south node is what we are looking to kind of release. We sort of been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, and now we are looking at evolving from that and moving more towards the qualities of the North Node. And so collectively speaking right now, the North Node is in Gemini. And it is in trine with Jupiter. Jupiter is trining the North Node. And so Jupiter is a planet that is associated with concepts like, abundance and growth and justice and optimism, these kinds of things. Luck. It is what's referred to as the greater benefic in traditional astrology. So it's the bringer of good fortune. But Jupiter, I always like to say Jupiter expands whatever it touches, right? And so there is such a thing as too much of a good thing. And so sometimes, when Jupiter's at play, it can be a little bit over the top, overblown. So that's just something to be aware of. But in a trine with the North Node, over this next few days, it's it's kind of like I see this as a possibility of a stroke of luck kind of thing that we could experience, or ease on our path forward, right, on where we're headed, so to speak. Excuse me, I have a bit of a tickle in my throat. It could also be just in keeping with what I just said about Jupiter potentially being sort of over the top, and the North Node being in Gemini. It could be like, TMI, right? Too much information as well, which I've been having that conversation with a few people of late and just talking about how it's information overload, going on right now in general. So, but it is a trine, and that's a nice harmonious aspect. So a bit of luck perhaps on our, trajectory, on our path. And then we also have Mars in Taurus, in trine, so another trine, to Pluto in Capricorn. And, Mars and Pluto together is really powerful, kind of Big Bang almost energy, in a sense, or it's like atomic energy. It's quite powerful when these two planets interact with each other. But this is a trine, and that's a supportive conversation. That's a harmonious conversation, right, between Pluto and Mars. So, and in the Earth signs, so something sort of grounded and practical. So I see this. It's like a power surge that we can experience, sort of thing, over these couple of days, right? So we could have this burst of determination in some area, to make something happen or to exercise our will. And it can be that can be in a harmonious way, or it can be beneficial in some way. And then we have lovely Venus entering Pisces tomorrow on February 25th. We have just after 8 p.m. Eastern time, Venus will move into Pisces. So Venus has been in Aquarius with all those other planets that were in Aquarius until the sun moved out, and now Venus is moving out as well. And we've got, while Venus is in Pisces, this is really nice energy. Venus loves to be in Pisces. Venus is what we call exalted in Pisces, right? So Venus is a welcome guest in the sign of Pisces, and a revered guest. So when Venus is in Pisces, it's like Venus is being supported in her role, right? So Venus is getting, the house guest is taking good care of Venus so that Venus can do Venus's job and, be true to nature, sort of thing. So think about, if you want to put this in practical terms, if you've been lucky enough to have supportive, relationships in your life, and people that support you so that you can do whatever it is you're here to do, right? Or so that you can get your needs met without really having to struggle all the time. It's like being in a situation where we feel relaxed and comfortable and free to be who we are, right? And we all, well, hopefully, we all know at least one person where we can really be ourselves in that person's presence. And so that's Venus in Pisces. Being really supported there and able to do Venus things, right? What Venus is meant to do, which is, take care of things like relationships and beauty and resources and our values, what brings us pleasure. These are all Venusian things. So Venus in Pisces, if you consider people that have Venus in Pisces in their chart, if you take that as a sort of standalone thing, this is kind energy. It's gentle. It's generous, dreamy. It's, Venus in Pisces is like a champion of the underdog sort of thing, right? But as with everything, there's always a potential for a downside. So there can also be this quality of martyrdom, or being a bit of a pushover, like being taken advantage of, or being too self-indulgent. So it's that kind of energy. Like Venus in Pisces can take in sort of every stray, right? Every stray animal, every stray person kind of thing, or every person down on their luck. And they can potentially, there can be like overspending or like giving away every shirt off your back, so to speak. And then, like I said, there can be a sense of being sort of overly indulgent, right? Like lacking boundaries. So, like being like, to give you an example, it would be, maybe like, treats are great, but not something that, like, you don't want to eat cake for breakfast, lunch, and dinner 5 days a week kind of thing, right? That's so you don't want to push it too far. But in general, Venus in Pisces is really beautiful energy. It's really great for things like the arts, creativity, like romantic relationships. It's good for a bit of healthy escapism, and gentleness, that sort of thing. So that's Venus in Pisces. And we also, and that, I don't know if I said this or not, but Venus will be in Pisces until March 21st. So we have, the next month or so with that going on, which is nice. And then we have the Sun, who's also in Pisces, which I spoke about in last week's video. And the Sun is in another supportive conversation with Uranus. So that's also going on. The Sun is in what we call a sextile to Uranus. And so, this can, like, I won't go too down this rabbit hole, but it could be like, like we experience some kind of sudden recognition, meaning that we're suddenly recognized for something, or motivated. Something happens quite suddenly that really motivates us, and it might come as a sort of a shock or a surprise, or a result of something that comes out of the blue. And it could also be this, an opportunity to shine sort of thing. So, oh, I hear some noise downstairs. I'm wondering if the furnace person is here. So if you hear some clattering around, that's what that is. But I'm not going to stop the video. So let's talk about the Virgo moon. I want to show you the chart right now. I'm just gonna turn around for a brief second and cover up the heater vent so that you can't hear what's coming up there, because sometimes you can hear the noise from downstairs coming up the vent. So there, got a full view of the back of my head. Okay, so here's the chart for today, or for the full moon, not for today, for the full moon. on the 27th. And so here we have, at the time of the full moon, we have the sun over here in Pisces, right close to Venus, who will be in Pisces, right, as of tomorrow, and Neptune's in Pisces as well. So Neptune is the modern ruler of Pisces, while Jupiter, who's up here in Aquarius, is the traditional ruler of Pisces. So you see, we still have Jupiter, Mercury, and Saturn up here in Aquarius, right? And there's Pluto, as I was saying, in Capricorn, in trine with Mars down here in Taurus, another earth sign. And there's Uranus. So we've got Uranus here still in a square to Saturn. So I'm going to, I've talked about that separately in another video, and I really recommend that you listen to that because it's very relevant. And I'll tell you why when I move the paper away from my face here. There is the South Node in Sagittarius, the North Node down here in Gemini, and I was talking about that trine from Jupiter, right? That blue line you can see from Jupiter. So see, Jupiter's at 16 degrees Aquarius, which is an air sign, and the North Node is at 16 degrees of Gemini, another air sign. So those are in trine to each other. But let's take a look here at where the sun and the moon are at the time of this full moon. So here is the sun at 8 degrees of Pisces. Right across the sky is the moon at 8 degrees of Virgo, right? Because a full moon is always when the sun and the moon are opposite the sky from each other. And then take a look down here again at Uranus in Taurus, another earth sign, right? Virgo's an earth sign, Taurus is an earth sign. So the earth signs trine each other, and we have Taurus. We have Uranus at 7 degrees Taurus, the moon at 8 degrees. So they are in an almost exact trine to each other at the time of the new moon. Okay, or the full moon rather. So I'm going to take that away from my face now. And I just want to say to you that the backdrop, right, that we still have going on is the Saturn-Uranus square. So this is something I talked about at length in, I can't remember if it was last week or the week before. One was I think it was the week before, because I think last week it was the Pisces video. But the sun or Saturn and Uranus are in this 90-degree angle to each other. And that's happening, all of 2021. But they are reaching sort of a peak energy when their square is exact 3 times over the course of the year. And that it hit exact on the 17th of February, but it's still within a degree. So that's still going on, right? So we still have that tension, the overall themes that I spoke about in that video, the tension between the old and the new, the tension between the past and the present, the tension between our responsibilities and our obligations and our desire for freedom, or to break free, or to liberate, right? Those are the themes that are going on with this Saturn-Uranus square. And so, that's collectively, but that's also personally for each of us in the 2 areas of the chart that Aquarius and Taurus sit. So have a listen to that video if you haven't already. All right, so that's the backdrop kind of thing. And let's talk more about Virgo now. So at a full moon, like I mentioned, the sun and the moon are always opposite each other, right? So it is this need for kind of balance between that more active solar yang, masculine kind of energy of the sun, and the more passive yin reflective energy of the moon, right? There's a need for balance. They're opposite the sky each other. So there's this kind of this tension, and we want to kind of try to keep things in balance rather than kind of one way or the other, too much one way or the other, right? And so as the moon is sitting in Virgo, the sun is across the sky in Virgo's opposite sign of Pisces. And so signs that are opposite each other are like 2 sides of the same coin. And they work on a continuum, right? And so the axis of Virgo Pisces is this axis of, You know, it's referred to as a few different things. I often call it the axis of practical magic because Virgo is the sort of practical end of things. You know, Virgo is an earth sign. Pisces is a water sign. Pisces is the more magical, you know, end of the spectrum, or the more spiritual, you know, whereas Virgo is more about sort of like the mundane, like day to day, and Pisces is more about the spiritual. Sometimes this is also called the axis of order, which is Virgo, and chaos, which is Pisces, right? Or the axis of service, sometimes it's called too. So it's like service on a day-to-day kind of you know, practical world level. So, you know, you're volunteering for an organization or something like that, or service in a more spiritual sense, right? And that's the Pisces end of the spectrum. So, you know, these two energies are working together at the time of a full moon, of this particular full moon. It's Virgo and Pisces, but they're in a bit of tension, right? So we're looking to balance those energies. What these two signs have in common is that they're both mutable signs. And so the mutable signs are the signs that mark the transition points between seasons. And we're going to talk more about that in a minute, specifically as it relates to Virgo. So full moons are times of, you know, when things kind of reach a crescendo, where things are illuminated. You know, the light is, the moon is fully reflecting the light of the sun at the time of a full moon. So things can come to light. You know, our emotions sort of bubble up from the surface, keeping in mind that emotions are sort of this watery quality, right? The moon pulls on the tides, which are, you know, pulls on the bodies of water, and as humans, we're made up largely of water. So it's not really surprising that the moon has an impact on our emotions, on our ebbs and flows, right? And so at the time of a full moon, we can get like emotions come to the surface that need to be released. But things can also, you know, things can come up to be released. Things can come to a culmination point. Things can bear fruit. You know, these are all things that we associate with full moons. And this particular full moon is related to the new moon, right? The cycle that began in a couple of weeks ago with the new moon in Aquarius. So whatever sort of seeds were planted at that time, you can start to see them bearing fruit now, or something that began is coming up for, you know, some sort of release or any of those things that I mentioned in relation to the full moon. So that's in the shorter term. But then in the longer term, if you think back, this chair is squeaking. If you think back 6 months ago, we had the new moon in Virgo in September, September 17th, actually. And that this full moon is at 8 degrees Virgo. That new moon was at 25 Virgo, for anybody who's interested in the details. But so in September, we had the new moon in Virgo. So think back to that time, around that time, mid-September. What was kind of getting off the ground then? Or what seeds did you plant at that time that you may now start to see bearing fruit, or, you know, coming up, you know, something that began around then is reaching this point of culmination, or point of, you know, release or letting go, or some insights, you know, around whatever that was are coming up for you. And that's, you know, that's how that always works. When at the new moon in Virgo, the sun and the moon are both in Virgo, right? In September, and in Virgo season. And then at the full moon in Virgo, the sun is opposite Virgo, the Virgo moon in Pisces. So you see how that works. So Virgo is, I think, lots of signs are like this, really, but there are some signs more than others that are often sort of misconstrued or misunderstood. And Virgo has that nature. As we talk, because you hear people talking about Virgo, like, Virgo's super critical and Virgos are nitpicky and, want everything clean and tidy and all of that. And that's kind of very surface level. I mean, it's true. It's true to a degree, but, there's more to it than that. So Virgo is very self-reliant. If you've been around here, long enough, you may have heard me talk about Virgo before and mention that, the root word of Virgo is virgin, right? And virgin, that word is not, it did not originally mean what we take it to mean now in our modern society, right? A virgin was originally someone that was whole unto themselves, right? Did not need another person to complete them, so to speak. And so Virgo is self-reliant often and self-contained. And some other qualities we associate with Virgo are like efficiency, right? Taking care of the details, purification, improvements, making improvements, analyzing, doing research. Virgo is very associated with like our daily habits and rituals, and at a sort of higher level, the sacredness of daily life. And when you're thinking about like timing wise, Virgo season comes during the harvest. In September, right? It's sort of in the northern hemisphere, anyways. It's harvest season, and there are a lot of things to take care of at that time of year, particularly if you're a farmer, or back in the day before we had a lot of modern conveniences and more people were growing their own food and there wasn't refrigeration and all those kinds of things, right? There were so many tasks to take care of at the harvest. The canning, like the harvesting, the canning, the chopping wood and having enough wood for the winter. Like if you didn't take care of all these little practical details, you would freeze and starve over the winter, right? And so Virgo is associated with that. Virgo is like Virgo's a very witchy sign. I've been reading a lot of Alice Hoffman lately, and even some other books, that are fiction, but the subject matter is witches. And Virgo is this, the sort of witchy woman who harvests the herbs and prepares the medicines so that we have the medicine we need when the time comes, kind of thing, right? So all of those things are associated with Virgo. And in our modern world, it's the time of year when, say, we're, doing our yard work, or we're maybe putting away our summer clothes, and taking out the fall and winter clothes, or maybe we are putting away our lawn furniture, harvesting our home gardens, that kind of thing, right? So what we need to remember about Virgo, I think that often gets forgotten, is this idea of sacredness and the daily practical minutia that we have to take care of is necessary, and it's sacred to our life, our lives here on planet Earth, because it's like, I often say this, you've heard the cliche phrase, I'm sure, where we are spiritual beings having a human experience, but you can't brush off the latter part of that statement, right? Oh, goodness. It's a bit loud. I don't know if you can hear that. Sorry if you can, but this is life. This is what's going on in my life right now. Anyway, so, we are having a human experience, and when we are in these physical earthly bodies on this planet, we have to take care of the details, right, of our daily chores. We have to take care of our health, our bodies, our those tasks that keep life flowing more easily. Because if we just did, all Pisces all the time, right, then life would be chaotic. There would be no routine. It would be a total mess. We need Pisces, but remember I said the balance, right? So, it's like if everybody just went off and sat, sat in an ashram or something for, their whole lives, well, the world would go to hell in a handbasket because we can't all just check out all at once. We need people to take care of those details, and we need to take care of those details in our own lives, right? It makes for a more enjoyable life. Now, on the flip side, there's always an opposite, or there's always an extreme end of the spectrum, right? So when we look at Virgo, if it's overdone and there's too much Virgo energy, then life becomes drudgery, and it's like we are just, all we do is take care of the daily work, right? And we're just working, and no time for pleasure, and no time for escapism, the Pisces piece, no time for just checking out and relaxing, for no time for art and dreaming and music and all of those things, right? If there's too much Virgo, or some other ways that can look is if there's too much Virgo, Virgo at its when it's not at its best can be more like neurotic, or very, very critical of others, but also of self. It can be, those stereotypical kind of things that we talk about when we joke about Virgo, right? The nitpickiness and being critical and a bit, obsessive compulsive kind of thing, and excessive with the cleaning and all of that kind of thing. So that can happen as well. But we really can't live in a world without Virgo, not very comfortably anyway. So what else do I want to say? I'm just taking a peek at my notes here. All right, so I think probably that's enough to say about Virgo. Oh, okay, one more thing I do want to say. Maybe a few more things I do want to say. Virgo is always trying to improve things, make things better. That can come across as criticism. But in Virgo's mind, it's like, I know what to do to make this better. I can help you. Just let me help you, right? Virgo is the sign of service, the helper. And so sometimes that can come across as criticism. And there can be this kind of anxiety, nervous tension with Virgo, because Virgo's just trying to make it better and just trying to improve it. And it's like, I know how that could be better. I can fix that, I can help you. And so when not allowed to do that, or when taken too far, there can be an anxiousness there with Virgo, and a nervous anxiety, that sort of thing. And so there can be like this constant need to putter and to just always be improving, and not be able to kind of sit back and relax and have a cocktail and listen to some music, like Pisces, right? So I have for those of you who don't know yet, I am a Virgo rising and a Pisces sun. So I have this tension, right, in my chart, in my life. I have the sun in Pisces, and I'm a Virgo rising. So yeah, that's the kind of tension. Ideally balance, you'd think, but sometimes it goes too much one way or the other, right? And so I'm personally acquainted with that, and the need for balance there. So I showed you some things on the chart. One of the things that I want to just dive a little bit deeper into here is how the full moon is in a trine with Uranus, because it's a very close aspect, right? They're within 1 degree of this conversation with each other. And again, a trine is this easy flowing, harmonious conversation between Uranus and the full moon. And so I feel like this could bring about some kind of like a sudden catharsis or a sudden unburdening. Maybe a release of pent up emotion or frustration or anxiety. Because Uranus brings things quickly. Uranus is the surprise, right? The surprise that we didn't know we needed or wanted necessarily. Uranus is the sudden flash of genius or insight, or the thing that comes right out of left field. So that's Uranus, and then the moon is our emotions, right? And it is our sense, like what we need to feel nurtured and safe and comfortable in the world. And in mundane terms, when we're talking about the bigger picture, the moon represents the people, right? In astrology, when we're talking about the collective. And so there could be one way this could look on a more kind of global scale or big picture scale is there can be groups of people that are rebellious in some way, or seeking freedom in some way, that are either harnessing this energy of Uranus or somehow connecting to this energy of Uranus. Groups of people that are connecting to this electrifying energy, this energy of rebellion, of shock and awe, of maybe innovation as well, right? Because Uranus is that planet of innovation as well. Science, the sort of genius kind of scientist, right? Like I think I've used the analogy before of Uranus as the sort of mad professor, like the Dr. Emmett Brown in Back to the Future kind of energy, right? So anyway, so we can have this maybe unburdening or release somehow, and maybe even like chance encounters with people that feel somehow emotionally fulfilling or nurturing, or allow us to unburden in some way. Or there could, it could just be like an ease in breaking some kind of emotional attachment or bad habit, or an ease in accepting change simply as well. So any of those things could be related to this Uranus in trine with the full moon. But then we have, like I mentioned to you before, the backdrop of the Saturn-Uranus square going on, and we also have the moon in conjunct with Saturn. So we've got the moon at 8 degrees Virgo and Saturn at 8 degrees of Aquarius. So at the exact same degree, but Virgo and Aquarius are signs that don't really have anything in common. Virgo is a mutable earth sign. Aquarius is a fixed air sign. And so, and by relationship in the chart, they're at an awkward angle, right? An inconjunct, or what we call a quincunx, sometimes is this awkward angle. And so it's like this itch we can't scratch. That's often the way I describe it. Or it's like, these two parties involved, in this case the moon and Saturn, don't quite see eye to eye. They don't have anything in common, so they're kind of like, how do we work this out, right? And so that might be a little bit of a fly in the ointment, so to speak. Like the letting go or the adjustments that need to happen might come with some sense of duty, or or it's like I'm letting go of one obligation, but it's so that I can fulfill another obligation, or I'm letting go of one responsibility because I have to deal with another responsibility, you know. Or it could also be a sense of like emotional detachment, which is not always a bad thing, right? Or emotional rigidity, or sort of, you know, emotional soberness. But in any case, there's some kind of adjustment that needs to happen, and it might feel a bit awkward. There might be something a little bit awkward going on at the time of this full moon. So, you know, patience is the key, and compromise is the key when we're dealing with that kind of an aspect. So I think that's all I want to say in terms of, you know, the moon and what's happening, and a few of the other things that I mentioned. So now we're going to take it through the signs, and we're going to talk about where is the full moon happening, this full moon in Virgo happening for you specifically in your chart, right? So when we're doing a general forecast like this, we're talking first and foremost to a rising sign. So if you know your rising sign or your ascendant, listen for that first, and then your sun sign and your moon sign for sort of added layers, right? Because when I'm doing a general forecast, I'm not looking at each of your individual charts to say, oh, you have the sun in, you know, your sun in Virgo is in whatever, the 7th house or the 9th house or whatever it is, right? So when we're doing a general forecast, we use rising sign. So there's that I want to mention. I'm also in a general forecast here. I'm using whole sign houses, and in case you're wondering. And I also want to mention to you that because the full moon is at 8 degrees, if you have planets or points, you know, or angles, so like you have your sun, your moon, your rising sign, a planet, a personal planet, or an angle like your MC or your IC, or your descendant, which is opposite the ascendant. If you have any of those around 8 degrees of Virgo, give or take 3 to 5 degrees on either side, then you're most definitely having a personal experience with this full moon, a more notable experience perhaps. And also if you have, you know, planets, points, any of those things around 8 degrees of the other mutable signs, which are Pisces, Gemini, and Sagittarius, you will also feel this because you'll have this moon in either opposition or square to whatever, you know, to your sun, your moon, your rising, or whatever in a mutable sign. Okay, so we're going to take it through the signs. I'm going to talk about this full moon. And of course, if you, one thing I didn't do, and I forgot to do actually this time, was write down some questions for you to kind of ponder. I've been doing that lately, right? Is to give you sort of a series of questions that you can think about in relation to the new moon energy, or the whatever energy I'm talking about in the video, in this case, the full moon energy. So, you know, I'll try to do this off the top of my head right now, just to give you a few things to think about, a few questions before I start going through the signs. So, think about what happened back at the new moon in Virgo, like I mentioned to you about 6 months ago, which happened in mid-September. What began around that time that is now reaching a point where you maybe need to let something go? You need to, or maybe you're reaping the rewards of whatever those seeds were planted back then, or something is kind of leveling up, reaching the next level. You know, you want to take the next step with it, or you're looking to, you know, release some kind of baggage around whatever that was back in September, middle September, you know, and this can be around anything, you know, Virgo related. So all those things we talked about, you know, taking care of the details. You know, it's like you maybe harvested something, or you got something prepared around that time, and now you are, you know, maybe getting ready for the next harvest, to plant the next harvest, or to reap the rewards of whatever it was that began back then. So this can be like, how can I take care of my daily routine? How can I take care of my, my daily rituals that I have to do anyway, with a more of a sense of like sacredness. So it's like, how can I bring a sense of magic or ritual into what I do on the day to day? Or a sense of reverence for it's like mindfulness, right? When we're thinking about doing tasks mindfully, we bring our attention to them and we treat them like they're important in the moment. And we bring our full awareness to things like, if you're doing some like spring cleaning, for example, right now, and that can be a kind of a magical practice in itself, right? Where you're you're quite literally, say, dusting or sweeping or washing windows or whatever. And as you're doing that, there's a sense of, you know, getting rid of the debris and clearing away the old, and the stagnant, and making way for the new, right? There's a sense of purifying things with Virgo. So, how can you do that in your daily life? Where do you need to maybe, be more like Virgo, more organized, more efficient? Where can you bring efficiencies into your life? Um, are there tasks that need taking care of, that it's just a matter of like, if you might be a bit overwhelmed, but if you just kind of make the list and literally check off the ticky boxes one by one, step by step, right? So that might be an approach that you use. Is there something going on in your life that you can tackle in that sort of bit by bit, taking care of one thing at a time sort of way? Trying to think of some other things that I could. Maybe as I'm going through each sign, I will, give you any questions that are pertinent to the particular house that this full moon is happening in for you. So that's what we'll do. So we're going to start with Virgo. And because this is your full moon, Virgo, and it's related to the new moon that happened in your sign back in mid-September. And this full moon is happening in your first house, right? So the house that has to do with your physical body and vitality, and the way you project yourself out into the world, the way the world perceives you, how you kind of come at the world, right, is first house. And so there's something in this arena, in this area of life related to those themes, that is, you're getting some kind of insight right now, or you might be realizing that there's things that you need to like let go of here. Some baggage you need to let go of, or you might be experiencing some kind of emotional upheaval in relation to those themes. And it's okay, because those emotions need to rise up so that they can be dealt with and let go of, right? It could be some kind of like did you set some intentions either a couple of weeks ago at the Aquarius new moon, or back in the fall, that in relation to maybe your health, or into how you interact with the world in some way, and now you're seeing that bear fruit, or you're realizing that maybe that's not working, I need to let it go, or you are gaining new insights in some way, as far as whatever that thing was that you might have started. It might be some kind of like I mean, in the first house, it could quite literally be anything. It could be a change of status in some way, meaning like not status in as we're talking about it in the 10th house, but more like it could be like how you see yourself, what you call yourself, even quite literally, right? How you kind of announce yourself to the world. This could be anything from like maybe you've gotten some kind of a like you got your PhD, so now you have doctor in front of your name, for example, or you know, you got married, so now it's like Mr. or Mrs. Or there's been a job change, and so you're going by a different title. You know, any of those kinds of things could happen, um, or it could be how you relate to yourself. Very much so, in the first house. It's like how you view yourself and how you want the world to view you as well. So, okay, I think that's enough. And we're going to move on to Leo now. So, Leo, for you, this is happening in your second house. So, the full moon is in your second house of personal resources, you know, so your money and possessions, your time, your energy, your skill, like the skills and talents you use to make your money and to get the things, you know, your to get your needs met, so sort of thing. It's very much about what you value, what you place value and worth on, your sense of self-worth. These are all second house themes. The second house can sometimes even be about you know, when I talk about getting our basic needs met, it can be even things like our how we nourish ourselves, right? Um, so all of those themes in the second house, but generally thought of as like your personal resources. And so for you, this is related directly to perhaps something that started back at the new moon a couple of weeks ago, and then potentially, you know, likely something that got off the ground, some seeds were planted, something that came about in the fall around mid-September of 2020 is now maybe reaching this culmination point, or you're getting more insight into that, or there's some kind of shift happening there, or something needs to be adjusted as far as that goes. You know, something's reaching ahead, or there can be like an emotional, some sort of emotional kind of reaction, right, going on to as far as those things go, or a leveling up even as far as those things go, those second house themes go. So, you know, it's about like what would Virgo do, right, in this whatever it is that you're dealing with or going through. And Virgo, remember, takes care of the details. Virgo checks off the ticky boxes. Virgo makes sure that things are, you know, efficient and purified. And Virgo does things with a sense of reverence for, you know, the daily grind kind of thing, knowing that these small details are important. So that's something for you to kind of chew on, Leo. And we're going to move on to Cancer now. So for you, Cancer, this is this full moon is happening in your third house. So this has to do with your immediate environment is third house. Like it's like whatever's in your sphere. And when I say immediate environment, it can be quite literally like, you know, your kind of community, your neighborhood, your you know, the sort of people and places that you interact with on a daily basis. But it can also, in this day and age, it can be people from afar that you're still interacting with on a regular basis with, right? So third house is your communications. So the daily back and forth that goes on, you know, text messages, phone calls, social media, you know, face-to-face conversations, all of those things. It's how you communicate. It is your perceptions. Third house has to do with people that we generally are kind of like on our level, so to speak, like our siblings, our peers, our cousins, our teammates, you know, our workmates, that sort of thing can be third house. Excuse me. Third house can also be commerce and marketing and those kinds of things. The third house is home to Gemini, and Gemini is ruled by Mercury. And so there's this kind of like quickness and variety, right? The third house has that quality to it. And so for you, Cancer, you know, something around those themes is reaching this culmination point at the time of this full moon. And whatever that was may have begun a couple weeks ago at the new moon in Aquarius, or maybe 6 months ago at the new moon in Virgo. And now whatever that is now kind of like, you know, coming up for maybe some adjustments need to be made. Maybe there's some kind of new information coming in. Maybe there is, you know, you're thinking about things in this arena differently. You are, you know, certain things need to be released or signed off on, or even you need to bring the discernment. That's one word I didn't actually use, and I'm quite surprised because that's a very Virgo word. But I didn't use that in the introduction, but I should have. Virgo is very discerning. And so it's like a matter of what needs my attention here and what doesn't, right? What do I need to let go of? And so, and that's in relation to those third house themes for you. Okay, so you know, and one last thing I'll say is, you know, if you approach whatever's going on here with the qualities of Virgo, you know, taking care of the details and you know, with reverence and with a sense of ritual and a sense of efficiency and, you know, all of those things, then that's really how to handle it. Okay, next we have Taurus. No, next we have Gemini. I'm sorry. Gemini, for you, this full moon is happening in your fourth house. So for you, this is this revolves around home, family, place of living, your sense of emotional security, your roots, this kind of thing, right? And so there is this sense of something's coming to pass here, something's reaching a culmination point, something's being illuminated, something's, you know, there, it could be like emotional release coming up around these themes, or some adjustments that need to be made around those fourth house themes. And this can be in relation to something that happened a couple of weeks ago, you know, something that started a couple of weeks ago when we had the new moon in Aquarius, or if you go take it further back to last September 2020, you know, mid-September, the new moon in Virgo, something that began around then, or was is now being revisited for some reason. And the idea here, the key is, what would Virgo do, right? So Virgo would be discerning about whatever it is that's going on. Virgo would, you know, pay attention to the details, would check off the ticky boxes one by one, make a list, cross off the things, whatever. You know, like for example, if you have a whole bunch of things that need to be done around your house, because it's fourth house, your literal place of living, and it's overwhelming, make a list one by one. And it doesn't have to happen overnight, right? And do those things with a sense of like ritual, or, you know, not drudgery. Brings a little bit of reverence and magic to it, right? Like I was talking about in the introduction, when you're taking care of those sort of practical, mundane tasks. So that's just one example. So I'm going to leave that there for you, Gemini. And next we're going to move on to Taurus, where we have the full moon happening in your fifth house. So for you, Taurus, this is like something reaching a culmination point, something coming up for release or review, you know, potentially review, like it needs adjusting, or something's bearing fruit that happened a couple of weeks ago, or that began a couple of weeks ago at the new moon in Aquarius, or, you know, longer term, about 6 months ago at the new moon in Virgo. And so this is in relation to fifth house themes. So children, childbearing, anything around children, pregnancy. It can have to do with what brings you pleasure, right? What sparks joy for you? It could potentially be related to your self-expression, how you shine out in the world, your creativity. Sometimes this involves like hobbies and that kind of thing as well. But how you have fun. And so for you, Taurus, there is, something that was initiated perhaps a couple of weeks ago at the new moon in Aquarius, is now coming to pass, is coming up for release, is, there's some insight happening around whatever that was, or some bearing fruit. Or it could be something that began around the new moon in Virgo around 6 months ago, in the middle of September. So, for example, like it's like, let's just think here. Did you decide to make plans to do something fun? Like maybe a couple weeks ago, you made some plans with people to do something fun, and now whatever the fun thing is coming up this weekend, maybe. It could be something very simple like that, or it could be something bigger, like 6 months ago you decided to maybe 6 months ago, you find out that you're pregnant, and then, the baby's coming, kind of thing. Or it could be something involving your kids, that started 6 months ago, sort of thing, back in September, or a couple of weeks ago, that as well. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there, Taurus. I'm going to move on to Aries. I feel a bit distracted today just because of what's been going on at home here. But so I hope this is landing with you. We're going to move to Aries, as I said. And we've got the full moon happening in your 6th house, Aries. So for you, that is the natural home of Virgo. The 6th house is where Virgo is at home, because that's all about the daily grind. And it's about, the work we do on the day-to-day, whether it's paid or unpaid work, how we are in service. It is, sometimes we can think about pets, issues around pets in the 6th house, or things that have to do with people that are like subordinates, or people that are not necessarily on an equal playing field. So, you can think about things like employee-employer kind of relations in that kind of thing in 6th house. But 6th house is very much related to our daily grind and our health. So, the key words there are work and health for the 6th house, to keep it simple. And something perhaps began around the new moon in Aquarius a couple of weeks ago, or further back at the new moon in Virgo in mid-September, that is now either coming to pass. So some seeds were planted, and now they're reaching, they're bearing fruit, or, metaphorically speaking, obviously, or there's new information coming in. There's a new insight, on offer here. There's something coming up for release in this area of work and health. And, that could be so many different things. Like it could be you started a new kind of health routine maybe back in September, and now you're starting to notice you're really starting to notice, the effects of that on your well-being, kind of thing. It could be something like you made a commitment, to yourself a couple of weeks ago to get organized, maybe do some purging and cleaning. And now at this full moon, you know, you're seeing the results of that kind of thing. Those are just some simple examples, but it could be something like that. Or it could be something bigger. It could be like, you know, maybe you got some health news back in September, or a couple of weeks ago, and now whatever that is, you're getting the next piece of the puzzle, right? Or something like that. So, but keeping in mind that we've got this nice trine to Uranus, so there could be some kind of, you know, surprising information or something like that that comes in around this time, but it's because it's a trine, it's harmonious, it's supportive. All right, next we've got Pisces. So Pisces, for you, the full moon's happening in your 7th house, and that is your house of one-to-one personal relationships. So, you know, anybody that you are in close personal relationship with, whether that be a significant other or whether that be a business partner, a close friend, family member. 7th house also speaks to contracts and agreements, and it speaks to our rivals, you know, meaning the people that we know that we are in sort of competition with, or, you know, that, like, it's not, as I often say, it's not like people that are talking behind our backs kind of thing. That's more 12th house related. It's like, you know, people that you know that you're in a bit of a rivalry with. So, but generally it's speaks to close personal relationships. So this full moon is something's coming to pass here that maybe started a couple of weeks ago at the new moon in Aquarius, or further back in September at the new moon in Virgo. And now it's reaching this culmination point, or it's bearing fruit. It is, you know, you're reaching the next level, or things are bubbling up that need to be released, you know, emotions, something like that, in regard to your relationships, or maybe in regard to contracts and agreements. So maybe you're doing like some kind of contract, like freelance work or something like that, and that's, you know, reaching that, whatever the contract was is reaching an end around this full moon. Could have been a short-term, like 2-week contract, or maybe a 6-month contract or something like that. So that's one possibility. Or, you know, a relationship that started maybe 6 months ago is now kind of reaching the next level. Or something involving your partner, you know, in relation to your partner. So something that your partner started or was involved with either a couple of weeks ago or maybe 6 months ago. Some seeds were planted, and now it's reaching whatever the next level is, right? It's bearing fruit. It's coming up for release. It's new information's coming in, or whatever, that kind of thing. Because 7th house can be, 7th house isn't always something that directly affects us. It could be something that is playing out in our partner's life as well, you know, or the people that we are in partnership with. So that's for you, Pisces. And, you know, the advice here is, what would Virgo do, right? Virgo is your opposite sign. And so you need a bit of that Virgo medicine to keep your feet on the ground. And, you know, speaking from experience here, I'm a Pisces sun and a Virgo rising. So you need that sense of discernment and, you know, doing the practical, taking care of the practical day-to-day tasks and checking off the ticky boxes kind of thing. So that's for you, Pisces. I'm going to leave that there. Make sure you listen to the intro, right? This light is weirding me out because every time I turn my head, it I don't know. It's like, and I don't know why, like, I don't know why this happens, but it gets brighter and darker. So I don't know why that is, but I got to fix that. Hopefully it's not annoying to you when you're watching the video. All right. Next, we're going to move on to Aquarius. Aquarius, for you, we've got the full moon happening in your 8th house. And so, you know, something started maybe a couple weeks ago at the time of the new moon in your sign, or maybe 6 months ago at the time of the new moon in Virgo in mid-September of 2020. And now it's reaching this point of, you know, something's coming to pass in relation to that thing, to those seeds that were planted, or whatever was initiated, right? And that's in relation to your 8th house. So this has to do with other people's resources. So time, money, energy, Oftentimes it's things like our partner's money, or it's debt, taxes. I mean, it's tax season, so that could be a very real, real thing. Um, Insurance, mortgages, bursaries, loans, all of those things, inheritance, right? So other people's money. It can be other people's time and energy as well, I find, anyways, because those are also resources. And it can also have to do with some sort of transformational process, like this cycle of death and rebirth, this eighth house, issues around mortality, um, so like drawing up a will or something like that. Uh, or it has to do with like the deep psyche, right? The skeletons in the closet, or the psychological sort of wounding and healing that we all deal with in our lives at some point. So for you, Aquarius, this is the area of life that's being impacted by this full moon. And, with this trine from Uranus, it could be that maybe some surprise, like maybe, you get your taxes done and you're getting more money back than you thought. Or maybe you're getting a break on a mortgage, although in this day and age right now, it doesn't seem like that's likely, but it's possible. Maybe there is, maybe you did some kind of paperwork for a loan or something like that a couple of weeks ago, and now, you're actually getting the funds. I'm trying to think of what else this could look like. Maybe you decide to start therapy and you're having your first appointment, or you're finishing a cycle of therapy, or something like that right around this time as well, Aquarius. But, that's the sort of psychological piece to it. So those are some examples I can give you, but the idea here is, right, something's coming to pass, something's coming up for release, something's bearing fruit, something's leveling up in relation to these eighth house themes. And it's a good idea to approach it like Virgo would, which is to be discerning, to take care of the details, to do the steps one by one, to have reverence, for whatever tasks are involved, to bring a sense of ritual and magic to it, like practical magic, right? Like we talked about in the introduction. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to move on to Capricorn now. Capricorn, for you, the full moon's happening in your ninth house. And so this full moon moment of culmination, of something coming up for release, of something being illuminated, of something needing adjusting, is happening in relation to things like, teaching and learning, potentially, as it relates to to higher learning, we call it, like, so it could be college, university, it could be some post-degree, postgraduate program, or it could be just something like, you're some kind of deeper study of something that you're doing on your own, even. Ninth house also speaks to travel, usually travel that is irregular, like meaning that it doesn't happen very often, or it's long distance travel, although that's not really an option for a lot of folks these days, but that's potential. Or it could be foreign people and places, right? And the sort of the things that we learn from them. And it's very much about our sort of philosophy, our worldview, our belief system, the wisdom traditions, like how we think about kind of the universe in general, right? So those higher minded questions, what brings meaning. Actually, it's interesting because what I want to mention here is that I have spoken to so many people and even done readings for people, and I've had this experience myself over the last little while. And I might have mentioned this before. I know I've mentioned it on social media, but where people are like really having some pretty significant existential crises going on. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's like there is a search for deeper meaning. It's like, is this all there is? Questioning things like, why am I doing this? Those bigger kind of life questions, right? What does it all mean? Those sorts of things, and a search for meaning. So that can very much be ninth house. So some of those kinds of questions can be going through your through your head right now. But whatever this is, those ninth house themes are implicated, and this is something that maybe kind of started around the new moon in Aquarius a couple of weeks ago, or maybe even like 6 months ago in mid-September around the new moon in Virgo. So something transpired then, and now it's reaching this next level or this culmination point or what have you, right? As I spoke about. Okay, and the idea here is, what would Virgo do, right? I mean, Capricorn, you are very focused and determined and grounded. You're also an earth sign. And so you have something in common with Virgo there, and Virgo is about the, taking the, like, whatever daily tasks need to be done and doing them not with a sense of sort of drudgery and do I have to do this, but more with a sense of, this is benefiting me, this is benefiting, maybe the people in my surroundings, and so I'm going to treat it as such, right? That it's something important and sacred. Okay, so that's for you, Capricorn. I'm going to move on to Sagittarius now, and I'm going to, the full moon is happening in your 10th house, Sagittarius. So for you, this is something that has to do with your public reputation and persona. It has to do with legacy. It has to do with your career, your worldly ambitions, your relationship to authority. All of these things are 10th house related. And so there is this full moon moment happening for you where something's reaching a culmination, something is bearing fruit, something is coming to pass, something's being released. And it's something that either began a couple of weeks ago at the new moon in Aquarius, or it might have, the seeds might have been planted back around the new moon in Virgo in mid-September of 2020. And now it's reaching this leveling up point, or like I said, this release point, right, at the full moon. And it's the idea here when we have a full moon in Virgo in general is to kind of ask, how would Virgo deal with whatever this is? And that would be with a sense of discernment and a sense of being sort of organized and practical and grounded and, attention to detail. Maybe there's some research that needs doing, these kinds of things, right? And a sense of reverence for whatever it is. And I spoke a lot about the qualities of Virgo in the intro, so please do listen to that. But, I'm thinking like, just in terms of like a practical example here, this could be, maybe you were applying for jobs, say, a couple of weeks ago, or even like 6 months ago, and now something comes to pass here, and there's a career move happening for you, or potentially a retirement even. As it is a full moon, it's like a release, a letting go, a sort of the next step, or something bearing fruit. So it could be around that. It could be something that is related to authority figures, your own sense of authority as well. You know, that is coming up at this time. That's like, again, either began a couple weeks ago or maybe 6 months ago. Or there's some kind of recognition, like public recognition that you're getting. And you may had like the first inkling of that, or the seeds may have been planted a couple of weeks ago, or even 6 months ago at the new moon in Virgo, and now it's the moment of recognition, or the moment of culmination of whatever that is now coming. It's culminating in some way. Okay, so that's for you, Sagittarius. I'm going to leave it there and move on to Scorpio. And Scorpio, for you, the full moon is happening in your 11th house. So the 11th house speaks to the collective, the group, our friendship groups, or, also like clubs, organizations that we're involved with or a part of or connected to in some way. It's very much about the people that can help us reach our goals, that can help us reach, take steps towards our vision for the future and our hopes and dreams for the future. Benefactors, right, is a word we sometimes use. And 11th house is also, like, when we're talking about the group and that kind of like networking and stuff, it can be, in this day and age, it can even have to do with online or the internet as well, reaching out in that way, right? Connected to groups in that way. And so for you, Scorpio, there's something going on here at the time of this full moon in Virgo that maybe, got off the ground a couple of weeks ago, or the first seeds were planted a couple of weeks ago at the new moon in Aquarius, or maybe even 6 months ago at the new moon in Virgo in mid-September of 2020. And whatever that is now coming to pass, or it's bearing fruit, or it's reaching a point where adjustments need to be made, or something needs to be released or let go of, right? Or there's a moving on, or a winding down, or that kind of energy around these themes, these 11th house themes. And like, maybe you had an idea to start an online group, and you are now going to launch that at the full moon. Sorry, I keep saying new moon. At the full moon. Some kind of, like, I don't know, Facebook group, or like online class or something like that, or reaching out to people on the internet in some way, or joining, you decided you're going to join some kind of organization or something like that, right? And now you're going to have your first interaction with those people, or you finally signed up or something like that. Or something, this could be like, friendship groups, something going on in friendship groups that happened, or that started a couple of weeks ago, and now it's reaching this culmination point, or maybe started like 6 months ago, and now it's reaching this point of culmination. So those are some things, some sort of more concrete things I can give you to kind of think about. And the idea here is, like, what would Virgo do, right? Virgo would be discerning. Virgo would take care of the details. Virgo would be practical, and would be efficient, and look to how things could be improved. Those are all Virgo qualities that we talked about in the introduction. So if you didn't listen to that, then please go back and do that, because it will bring you more depth and context for what I'm saying to you here as far as the 11th house and the full moon there goes for you. So I'm going to leave that there, Scorpio, and we're going to move to, last but not least in this case, Libra. So Libra, for you, this full moon is happening in your 12th house. So it's a full moon where there is some sort of culmination, something bearing fruit, something coming to pass, something reaching next level, something needing adjustment, some sort of emotions bubbling up around certain themes as related to the 12th house. The 12th house is the last house, right? And so it is associated with sometimes like endings and losses, but it's also very much about the unseen and things that go on behind closed doors, or things that are going, brewing below the surface kind of thing, things that are happening in secret, or things that are related to places that are kind of tucked away from the world, places of confinement, we would call them. So places like hospitals, hospices, spiritual retreat centers, prisons, rehab facilities, any of those things you can think of. And so there may be something going on in that sphere. These are 12th house is about things that are kind of buried in the subconscious, and maybe things are coming up for you at this time, right? Are bubbling to the surface. Or dreams, maybe things are coming through in dreams for you right now, or some kind of spiritual catharsis is happening, or spiritual, something regarding your spiritual practice or spirituality in some way, shape, or form is reaching this culmination point, or this full moon moment, right? And whatever this is began potentially a couple of weeks ago at the new moon in Aquarius, or further back around 6 months ago at the new moon in Virgo. And now you're getting this full moon moment that's happening, right? And so in this area of life, the 12th house. And so the idea here, again, that I keep saying to every sign is, what would Virgo do, right? How would Virgo deal with whatever it is? And Virgo would be discerning, and Virgo would be meticulous, and would be practical and efficient, and take things sort of one at a time. Ideally not get overwhelmed, right? Because Virgo can have that tendency too to get a bit anxious and stuff, but when things are approached with a more, these are the things that need to get done, and we're going to be glad that they got done in the long run, because we have to do the work in order to, reap the harvest kind of thing. And so that's Virgo energy, right? And so bring that energy to whatever's happening for you at the time of this full moon. So that's what I'm going to say for you, Libra, and that's for all 12 signs. I hope that you got something of value from this video. And if you did, please like, please share, please subscribe, leave me a comment. All those things are really helpful. And hopefully next week I'll see you, and I'll have a working furnace. I might already, I don't know. I got to go downstairs and see what's going on. Okay, take good care. Bye for now.